Hello, everybody. Thank you for stopping by. Welcome to the Stand Up Taller podcast with Neil Berliner and Al Martin. Take it away, guys.
I remember doing a show in Las Vegas, and there was the old comics and the young comics, and it was like Jack Carter and Norm Crosby, and it was all these older comics, and then the younger comics was like me, and wasn't that young, but we were younger, and Johnny Dark and John. All of a sudden, I just lost his name, but from Long Island, great comic, and all of us, But when we were there, all the comics, it didn't matter who was older, who was younger. Everyone loved what they were doing, and it really showed us younger comics that how much people love comedy.
Was it John Joseph by any chance?
No, John Joseph is great.
Yeah.
I can't. He had a radio show for a long time.
Okay. Well, you brought up the topic of cookies, Eddie, and I have a friend of yours here in my studio. What's the deal with you and the Entenmann's cookie jar?
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, there was a a contest. Caroline's used me a lot, and I luckily got to play there last week. It's closing in another week from now. And one of the gigs I got a phone call. They need you to host this Entenmann's, comedy competition. And the people who are running it were Cindy Williams, Shirley of Laverne and Shirley, and her husband, Hudson. I forget, Tim Hudson, one of the Hudson brothers. And I got involved, and I had such a good time. It's a long, long story, but to cut it down, I had a great time. I crushed as the host of this thing. I was dancing and having fun and doing characters, and because I started in improv, and that really helps a lot to be able to have those improv skills, especially as a stand-up. And at the end of the show, it was running late. I had to run to Stand Up New York, and Cindy Williams starts running after me. Where you going? Where you going? You were great, and I just wanted to sit with you. And she gave me some really pretty high-handed compliments. Comparing me to Andy Kaufman, who was her friend, because her, that was totally off the mark. But she said she used to hang out with Andy and would dress in different outfits and sit in his audience and act like, play characters for him. She was the plant. So she told me, so anyway, I had to run to Stand Up New York, and she says, you don't go. And I said, I got to. And she, as a joke, she just went off to punch me like, hey, and she hit me right in the solar plexus. And I went down. I was like, I got knocked out by Shirley Feeney. And, all of a sudden I'm like catching my breath. I go, look, I got to go. And I take off, and I'm laughing my ass off in the cab going, I just got hit by Shirley. Anyway, the next morning at like 8 a.m, I get a phone call, and it was Cindy apologizing. And we ended up talking for 2.5 hours and became best friends from that. And that was a whole Entenmann's thing. It was,
story recently. You had it on tape. Was it on tape?
Yes, yeah. He did. Yeah.
Great story. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So now, these days for Eddie Brill, is it vegan or no vegan?
Well, in 2010, I ended up, was so heavy and so uncomfortable. And I decided that I would try this, vegan lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. And I never felt better. My hair was shiny, my skin was glowing, my voice was richer and deeper. And I did it for a couple of years, but it's not easy to do it because, first of all, it's expensive to eat vegan. And at the same time, well, also people put it down because people don't like being healthy is like a sin, like you're a health nut or whatever. It wasn't easy to do. It wasn't easy. I lost friends because they felt guilty if they were with me. Like I went to a ball game with my stepbrother, and he goes, "Do you mind if I have a sausage sandwich?" I go, "Do I mind? I don't, stick it up your ass. I don't care what you do with the sandwich. Why are you asking me?" But everyone kind of felt that people were uncomfortable that I was eating, and they felt like when they were eating with me that they were doing something wrong. Or it's kind of weird. And then for like 2 years I did it, and I lost like 135 pounds. I was in the best shape of my life. I was able to dress really nice, and it was really great. And then 2012, 13, I went off because of some negative things that were going on in my life. And then I went the wrong way. But lately, because I've been so sick lately with this cold and all this different stuff, I had some problems with my ankle and gout. And I decided, look, I just have a grandchild. I'm not going to die now. So I went back to eating really healthy again. So I'm mostly a vegan again, and I feel great. Plus, but I did have chicken noodle soup because, as you know, when you're sick, chicken noodle soup is the best medicine in the world. So I did have some chicken, but the whole idea is I'm eating really, really healthy, and whenever I do, I feel amazing. And at the time when I was doing it, I felt so amazing. And I know how much lying there is in the food industry and how people are not really smart enough or educated enough, not smart, but educated enough in this country about food, how food is the best medicine. It really is. But I was screaming, oh, you got to do this. And a friend of mine who was right on said, stop yelling, get off of the mountaintop and just be an example, and then people will come to you. And he was right. I stopped screaming and yelling, because dairy is one of the most horrible things you can do. I mean, I won't even let dairy touch my skin now that I know the facts about dairy. I wouldn't go near it even in the years that I was eating poorly. But we're told it does a body good. We're lied to all the time. So, but I stopped yelling and screaming, and then friends of mine who were heavy said, you look great. How can I do better? And I've helped a lot of people change their lifestyle and become more healthy. But it's not something that I brag about or talk about because people are very uncomfortable when you talk about getting healthy.
Yeah. Well, you're right about the chicken soup.
Yeah.
Mount Sinai Hospital in their gift shop, they sell Mount Sinai branded chicken soup. And there have been medical studies showing its benefits. Absolutely.
That's what they say.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I can say to you, obviously, looking at me, I've been on many diets that have succeeded and failed. And I found I kind of tripped into something that worked for a while, but like you, pressures of life and business sort of derailed me. I'm a binge eater and I eat out of, I don't do Coke and I don't drink. Food is my drug of choice. But I found that I naturally lost, forget the Weight Watchers and the Atkins and all this.
None of it works. If it worked, it wouldn't be $1 billion business.
You know what worked for me, Eddie?
What's that?
Just sticking to one slogan. If God didn't create it, don't eat it.
Right.
Yeah. Just
man, as great as man is, could never compete with nature, ever.
Exactly. Fruits, vegetables. If you
But
feel
what's interesting is that a lot of fruit and vegetables are tainted because they're poorly grown or the soil is horrible. America's not good at taking care of its own soil. There are people who are celiacs who can't eat pasta in America because it'll kill them because the soil is so bad in America. But you can go to Italy and eat their pasta and it's very healthy because they have better soil than we do. It's all this stuff that I know that would really help. The key is diets don't work because what I'm doing is what you were saying. I'm trying to fill a hole that I could never. I could eat all the food in the world and it still wouldn't fill that hole. That makes me a compulsive eater. And so what I have to do is to realize that and to be really honest. So lately I've been eating really healthy. I'm feeling much better. I get on my exercise bike when it's cold out. I walk. I'm not perfect, but I'm taking care of myself a little bit better because I want to watch my grandchild grow.
Absolutely. One question I had, Eddie, I've been thinking about this for a very long time. Comedians get locked into particular late night shows. Like, for instance, like a guy like Andy Kindler, Letterman, right?
Right.
A friend of mine, Emma Willman, Colbert. Is there some kind of like unwritten rule among the late night hosts that they don't touch the other late night hosts, comedians?
Sometimes, but it's not always. When I was booking Letterman, all of a sudden her name slipped my mind. This is early in the morning for me, but I've been up since 3. There's a great comedian who I love who was being managed by the Tonight Show, and I put her on Letterman because she was brilliant, and it didn't matter to me, who booked who. But Emma Willman is fantastic, and if I knew her when I was booking Letterman, I would have most likely put her on Letterman. The hosts are different. Letterman like the odd, quirky comics like Jake Johansson and Paula Poundstone, and those are the kind of Brian Regan's. and that's the style that they liked. And Colbert has his style that's just different, and Leno had his style. And you just have to, in order to get on those shows, it's important to have your own style, and hopefully someone will take you on and say, I'd like you to be on the show all the time. Kindler, he didn't always, sometimes he'd bomb and he'd be funnier than if he was doing really well. And, we got such a kick out of it at Letterman. He's just such a great, funny guy. But the whole key is not to try to be somebody you're not, to tell your truth and not to try to please. And that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last 10 years, is not to try. It's how if you were going to date somebody or marry somebody or go out with somebody, and that person was trying to kiss your ass and didn't have a personality of their own, it wouldn't be that alluring. As a comedian, I see it like when I would audition comedians, if they acted like they didn't give a shit if I was there or not, that was much more alluring than the comedians who were trying to kiss my ass.
Right.
And I did a podcast years ago in these guys from Finland called "We're Not Here to Please You," and just the name of the title changed my life, because I ended up going on stage, and just telling my truth, and without needing the audience to laugh. I wanted them to laugh, but I didn't need them to laugh, and they laughed more.
Mm-hmm.
It was much more alluring as a performer to tell your truth and not care what other people think so much as, I mean, you don't want to be rude. You don't want to, but like I look at Chappelle, and no matter what anyone says about Chappelle, I admire him because he tells his truth and he doesn't give a shit. People say to me, well, I didn't like what Chappelle did. I go, then turn the channel, watch another comedian, or, wait 15 minutes, there'll be another comedian, on, or go to this place and a bunch of comedians are going to try to please you and maybe you'll be happy. It's all subjective. So back to the original thing about this comics on this show, there was a thing where people wanted to, and Letterman, we wanted to break comedians, give them their break. And we were able to do that to a lot of comedians. But it doesn't matter that much anymore because there's 10 billion TV shows and you're recording it and videos. And, the key is not to try to get on a show, to try to be the best comedian you can and let a show find you, go, oh, wow, we got to, like a comic like Mark Normand, or, you just see how brilliant of a mind he has. And, anytime I was booking anything, I'd always try to find Mark and see if he was free, because what a great comedy mind he had, and so quick and so sharp. It wasn't because, this joke was this, or this was right for Letterman, or this, just, So Emma Willman, who, I got to see her at Gotham one night, and I just said, oh my God, this person's really special. And, but unfortunately,
Well, I got to tell you, I taught joke writing at the Pit in New York for 3 years. And during that time, she took my course right before she got into comedy, and she was a thunderbolt. She took over the whole, it was amazing. I said, this is a star in the making. I can't believe it. And she really has done so much. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I want to just jump in real quick and give a quick observation. I don't mean to interrupt the host here,
No,
but
interrupt away.
It's super interesting to me. As you were mentioning, the different talk shows that have kind of their different style, the type of comic that they like to have on. My personal, like the gods of comedy to me, my heroes were Letterman guys, like when Stephen Wright or Emo Phillips and Norm Macdonald, the guys who I look up to as like, oftentimes I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing their act. I feel so bad because they're just so important to me. It's so interesting to hear that, like, yeah, these were all Letterman people, and these were all, those type of guys, and they, the quirky kind of weird off the wall style that was, I guess unique to Letterman. So it's
Right. I mean, I
interesting.
wasn't booking the Eddie Brill show. I was
Yeah.
booking the David Letterman show. So I had to find comedians that fit the kind of comics that he liked. And it was, and it made it easier to do the auditions. There were a lot of comedians I saw along the way that I couldn't book on the show because they weren't right for the show. Doesn't mean they weren't the greatest comics or some of my favorites. It's just, that's just the way it is. So if there was the Eddie Brill show, I think I would have had some different comedians that Letterman didn't have on the show. But, people who watch the show, the Letterman show since 1981, they know, if they really know the show, they know what kind of comedians that Letterman likes. Some people come up to me and say, you you're not booking me on the show. And, it's, but I'm not doing it because I don't like the person. That person wasn't right for the show that I was booking.
Mhm, mhm.
Now, as much as you were involved with the Letterman show, I'm not sure if you're still involved in it, but weren't you one of the people that started the Great American Comedy
Yeah, in
Festival?
fact, I even named it the Great American. I took
I-
names, Great America Comedy. I was approached by these people many years ago, 2007, 2008 was the first year of the festival, about teaching a comedy workshop during this festival. And I asked them about it, and they said they were going to get 60 amateurs and not going to pay for them or put them up, but we're going to get 60 amateurs, do a competition. And, I said, well, that's death. Well, you would never want to do that. You're going to get in too deep, and you're going to have a horrible time of it. I said, let me book it, and let me book the comedians that would have done the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. At the beginning, I booked Mark Normand or just amazing, amazing comedians. And then, of course, I had booked also Robert Klein and David Brenner and Paula Poundstone and Larry Miller and those kind of names I booked for the headliners. And I bring up, Roy Wood Jr. and, just all these different comedians for it. And I said, trust me, let me book this. Let me construct the festival. I've already helped a lot of other people start festivals. Let me do that. And they said, sure. So because their plan would have, the festival would have been dead in 1 year. So the festival not only was the proudest thing I've ever been part of, and it became a place where I was, I really found all these amazing comedians, Mikey Winfield, and I just go on and on and on. And they crushed, and the people would pack the place, 1,234 seats in the theater, packed for people coming to see the greatest comics in the world. And it was really working out really well. I did a fake competition because the audience really wanted it. Everyone got paid the same. No one got paid more, whether you won or lost, whatever, just to try to get these people who weren't that comedy savvy involved. And then I wanted to stop the competition. So by the end, I had Martin Short and Caroline Ray and Larry Miller and, Alan Havey. And, it was just the greatest comics in the world coming to Nebraska, who all loved Johnny Carson. The Carson family loved me because I was bringing these incredible comedians in. And, I said, Johnny wouldn't have booked amateurs. He would have booked people who have gone past the amateur part and were ready to be on the cusp of greatness. So if you look at the list of comics that I had, it was great. So, and I also taught these people, these people, up until the certain point, they were smart people, but they were, they never had comedy. They never knew what to do. But I taught them. I said, look, here's the agents, here's the managers, here's how you do it. And every year, the festival actually won awards for the number one tourist attraction in Nebraska. And it was really wildly successful.
What was number two?
Number two was a corn eating contest.
Exactly.
No, it was baseball, College World Series.
Mhm.
There was a lot of major things that, oddly enough, go on in Nebraska. And it's, I never had been to Nebraska, but I really got along with a lot of the people in the community. But then they got selfish, and they pulled me from the festival and took over. All during that time, they were plotting behind my back to take all the numbers and all the stuff, and eventually just pushed me out. And it's one of the most horrible things that's ever happened in my life, that these people who I created this amazing festival were, and I thought, these are lovely farm corn growing folks who, in this tiny town, becomes alive 1 week a year, and they were ballsy enough and mean enough to push me out. And
With New Yorkers, you usually know where you stand, right?
right,
They
yeah.
don't like you. They don't like you. They'll tell you that.
And yeah, and I would be, if you want to have a conversation with me, the thing is, what I learned from Letterman is, in order to be really good, you got to be tough. And I was tough, and I brought in the best producers in the world. I brought in, this friend of mine, Rick from St. Louis, who is one of the best producers I've ever dealt with in all the years, and Pat Buckles, who's one of the greatest producers in comedy. And I brought in some really great and people for it. And I brought in people who run the Comedy and Magic Club, and Richie Barrett, and I brought in a whole bunch of different really top-notch people. Added magic because Carson was a magician, and I brought in Cavett because he was a magician. And so instead of these people coming up to me, go, look, and I was very tough on them, is what I was trying to say. I was really, a lot of the things that some of the people were being underhanded, and I said, do not do this. Like, there would be comics who would sign a contract, you cannot tape me for the festival, and these guys would tape them anyway. And I said, if they find out, we are screwed legally and everything. So stop it. But they didn't stop it. And then, they just thought, it's small time, whatever. And there was a lot of things. There was this one thing where they made us like we were a charity, and they got money from the government saying we were a charity. It was just really horrible stuff. And I yelled at them and said, do not sully what we've put together here to make this amazing festival. And people didn't like that I was so tough on them. They wanted something else. But I learned from Letterman, you got to be tough, and you got to demand everyone to be professional. And still to this day, I'm really bummed out that they did that to me after I put an amazing amount of work. I travel the whole country and bring in these, great comics. And, so anyway, the Great American Comedy Festival, and I named it. I was the one who named it. I created it. I was the architect of it, and they kicked me out and there's nothing I could do about it.
But to what end would they want to get?
Well,
To what end would they want to get rid of you? I mean, to replace you with somebody, or
They
money,
didn't want
or
to spend the money that it cost.
just money?
Yeah. And they also, like one of the women who was helping us raise money for, sponsorship, her son wanted to run it. So all of a sudden he's running it, and all of a sudden he's being interviewed for the paper and the thing, and he's telling people, yeah, I worked with Eddie for years, and I never met the guy. I mean,
that always seems to be the trail: nepotism and money.
If they would have came to me and said, look, we're not making that much money, can you do a little break? But the truth is, they were making a lot of money, and they were just bad people, it turned out to be. And I trusted them enough not to need a contract that was going to protect me, and that was my mistake for not being as sharp.
So Neil, we're coming up, I think, on our time. Any other questions you want to ask Eddie?
Yeah. Eddie told a fantastic story this morning. Franco Harris died last week, a few days ago, and Eddie had a fantastic story that we got to get to. So I'll just make that the lead in. Eddie, why don't you take it?
Yeah, my father was a great baseball player. He played in Coney Island as a kid, and he caught Sandy Koufax when they were kids. And he was my father was the catcher, and he was amazing. And my mom was a huge Yankee fan. Only because the Brooklyn Dodgers left, so that's why she hated. She went to the Yankees. My father loved the Brooklyn Dodgers, and I'm a huge baseball nut. My father would take me to games, and I saw Roberto Clemente. And not only was the greatest player I've ever seen in my life, I did book reports on him and found out what an amazing human he was. And so I got involved with the Clemente Foundation through my friend Annette, who worked at the Letterman show, who used to work for the Yankees. She said they're looking for someone to host the Clemente Foundation. And I was like, oh, please, please. So for years, I got involved with the Clemente family. I still am. I'm still really close with the whole family. And the brothers are like my brothers. The Vera, Clemente's wife, called me Iho, which is son. It was the greatest feeling in the world. And so it was really great. And I met an incredible amount of people. I met Big Poppy there, and I met Bobby Bonilla, and then I met Doc Ellis, and I met, to me, it was a dream come true. And then, I met Rod Gilbert and from the Rangers, and I met all these, I'm a sports fanatic, and to hang out with all these people and they treating me like an equal was dream come true-ish. One of the guys I met there was this guy, Les Banos, little tiny 5-foot tall man who was a Hungarian, called the Little Hungarian. And what was interesting, during the Second World War, he was worked as a double agent spy and saved the lives of thousands and thousands of Hungarians by finding out secret information. He was an amazing human being. and it was one of Clementi's closest friends. And Clementi said to him, like if say Clementi was such a great leader, he would bring Les with him to the ghettos of Pittsburgh and say, I want you to take photos and I want them to put them in the paper because people are trying to sweep this stuff under the rug and I want people to know the injustices that are going on. So between the two of them, they were just really great and doing beautiful things. Of course, when I'm doing this, Clementi had died a long time ago. So anyway, Les told me the story that he was the Pittsburgh Steelers and Pittsburgh Pirates, film photographer. So the big Franco Harris, who just recently had died, had in 1972 as a rookie won Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was an incredible player, and he made a catch in 1972 in the game between him and the Steelers in Oakland, and that catch was called the Immaculate Reception. That catch, won the game for the Steelers, who eventually lost to the Dolphins in the perfect season of 1972. But it was just so cool. And Clementi called up on the morning of that game of the Immaculate Reception. There was an earthquake in Nicaragua, and Clementi said, "You know what? I'm going to go next week, and I'm going to take a plane of clothing and food to these people. Les, will you come with me and film it?" And he said, "I'd love to, but if Pittsburgh wins today, I got to stick around for next week's game. If Pittsburgh loses today, I'm there with you on the plane." So anyway, the game goes on, and Pittsburgh wins the game on this miracle play at the end called the Immaculate Reception. Clementi says, "Look, I know, Les, now that you can't join me." And Les said, "You know what? I'll show up a couple of days later and meet you there, and I'll film all the stuff." So Clementi goes on the plane to fly there, and the plane crashes in the ocean. And everybody on the plane dies. And so the Immaculate Reception catch by Franco Harris not only kept the Steelers in the game, but it saved Les Banos' life.
Unbelievable, right? Unreal. Yeah. All right, we'll end with this, Eddie. We're both Met fans. We got a great I'm sure you know this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you know why the Mets colors are orange and blue?
Mm-hmm.
You know, right? Tell the people.
Yeah, because of the Giants and the Yankees.
Giants and
Dodgers. Giants and the Dodgers.
Dodgers leaving
because they were the National League colors of the National League teams, and that's why it's orange and blue.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, wow, this has been awesome. We really appreciate it. Have a great time tonight with your son. Anything else you want to plug for the next coming weeks?
I'm good. Eddie Comic I'm at Instagram at Eddie Comic. You could read a lot of my stories on Facebook as Eddie Brill. Not many room for friends, but you can follow on there and you read a lot of the stories that I write. And you can always send the thing at Twitter, Eddie_Brill. But lately I've been doing more Instagram at Eddie Comic, EDDIECOMIC.
Always great to speak to you, brother. Take care.